This video will contain spoilers for Jujutsu Kaisen chapters 129, 130, and 131, and Season 2, Episode 21, otherwise known as Episode 45. So the second season of Jujutsu Kaisen is going through a last-minute metamorphosis, and in this series, I'm going to be analyzing the story of the series as it airs and, as a manga reader, comparing the anime to the manga to see what they pulled over directly, what they modified or expanded, and what they just straight up removed. So let's begin with the 21st episode of Season 2 of Jujutsu Kaisen. First, I'll recap the plot and explain what chapters it covered. The episode begins where we finished the previous, with Mahito's all-direction body repel carrying the fight onto street level in front of the 109 building. Mahito contorts the flesh to form a sort of platform for them to fight on, suspended against the buildings in the air above the street. Yuji and Todo go on the offensive, and Mahito uses a form of his cloning ability to pop off his head from his main body and form it into a new body, replacing the head on his main body with a gross, bug-like one. It seems, however, the head is the actual source of the main body, as it can still use idle transfiguration, which Mahito uses to unveil a new use for soul multiplicity. Up until now, he had been using incompatible souls with strong rejection reactions to create an explosive reaction to aim at enemies as a weapon. In this case, he brings more compatible souls with weak rejection reactions together to form a new fighter to act as backup for him, which he calls Polymorphic Soul Isomer. Todo does some quick battle analysis and comes to the conclusion that the body with the head must be 20% of Mahito's actual power, but is the main body because it can use his technique, and presumes the soul isomer to be the equivalent of a grade 2 or 3, which leads him to decide to take it on so Yuji can focus on Mahito. Unfortunately, his analysis seems to have been lacking, as the isomer quickly overpowers him, much to the Knot brothers' surprise. It launches him through a building to the next block, ending up with them fighting on Ground Zero of Sukuna's Shibuya massacre. Todo gets creative and manages to land a blow on the isomer, and it immediately dies. Todo realizes these things are glass cannons, with high attack power due to so many souls being merged together to form them, but they aren't any more durable than a standard human. Two more of the isomers approach him. Mahito presses the attack, believing himself to have been freed of Todo's interference, but manages to push Yuji into Ground Zero as well, where Todo promptly reappears beside him, making a remark about Mahito really not wanting him around. Mahito assesses the situation, noting that hitting Todo is too difficult, and considers domain expansion. He remembers that using domain expansion puts him at risk of being killed by Sukuna, and as barrier techniques are complicated, he won't be able to create a barrier trapping Todo while excluding Yuji like he did with Nanami, and even if he could, I wonder if Todo could just swap with Yuji using his technique before the sure hit connects and flip the script on Mahito anyway. Instead, Mahito decides to emulate what he saw Gojo do earlier, casting a 0.2 second domain expansion. As Mahito casts his domain expansion, Todo employs a simple domain he was taught by Yuki to guard against it, while Yuji is already on the move trying to rush down Mahito to keep him from injecting idle transfiguration into the domain. Unfortunately, Mahito was still faster than them both, already injecting idle transfiguration at the same time he was casting the domain. Because of the insight he had gained from his Black Flash, he was able to make the two-step process of setting up the domain and then injecting the technique into one. Mahito has a conversation with Sukuna here, speaking inside his innate domain as we saw happen the last time Yuji was in Mahito's domain in Season 1. This scene is debated in the community. Some people believe this might be a plot hole of some type. Either way, the end result of this 0.2 second domain expansion kerfuffle is that Todo didn't get his simple domain off in time, and his left hand begins transfiguring. Yuji reacts to this, and Mahito takes advantage of this distraction to clobber him down, then rushes Todo. Todo cuts his hand off before the transfiguration can spread to the rest of his body, evoking images of the fourth Araikage cutting his hand off when Sasuke hits it with Amaterasu. After doing this, while his hand is still in the air, it shifts into spikes that stab out at him and cut the fiber necklace for his locket. For a short time after the end of a domain expansion, the user's curse technique becomes unstable and difficult to control, so Mahito opts for a simple cursed energy reinforced punch to Todo's gut, landing another black flash. Despite this, Todo instinctively concentrated all his cursed energy to his stomach to minimize the damage. Mahito realizes his technique is back and rushes Todo in hopes of ending him with idle transfiguration. Suddenly, Todo's damaged necklace finally snaps, and his locket falls to the ground, breaking open. Inside, he has photos of Takata-chan and Yuji. The absolute mad lad uses Mahito's hand to clap with his right hand and switches places with Yuji, who is already throwing a punch. Yuji lands another black flash on Mahito's face. Todo falls to the ground, his right hand steaming and damaged, thinking that it's a miracle he managed to get away with just that after touching Mahito's hand. Yuji acknowledges that he's in this fight alone now, while Mahito pulls out another polymorphic soul isomer. The soul isomer waylays Yuji with a barrage of attacks, as Mahito finally manages to grasp the true shape of his soul. Yuji dispatches the soul isomer just in time to witness Mahito channeling Frieza, using idle transfiguration on himself and assuming his true form. Instant spirit body of distorted killing. Yuji is surprised, as he didn't figure Mahito is the type to go on a journey of self-discovery, and Mahito claims that only after killing Yuji will he truly be born. The two engage in a scuffle, and Yuji pulls a similar move to the one he used on Choso to go for a body blow with his left hand, finding Mahito's body to be even harder than Choso's was at the time. As the two fight and Mahito begins to overwhelm Yuji, Yuji realizes that his attacks simply aren't doing anything to him, and as a cursed spirit, Mahito is now something completely different than before he unlocked his new form. Mahito does one of my favorite anime fight moves and grabs Yuji's face to slam him into the ground. The ground crumbles away, and the two fall into a pit with a sewer pipe filling it with water. Yuji notes that in order to finish him off at this point, he needs to hit him with a black flash imbued with all of his remaining cursed energy. As he remembers being told that no sorcerer can use black flash at will, his right leg starts to wobble and give out. At the same time, Mahito's body shows signs of giving out as well. He notes that getting hit by Black Flash right after domain expansion really did some major damage to him, despite the transformation. Mahito sarcastically says that they both seem to have a lot of energy left, and the two engage in another salvo of attacks. Mahito knows that Yuji needs a Black Flash to win, and so sets in motion a countermeasure. He releases his transformation on the left side of his body, while reinforcing it with cursed energy, anticipating that Yuji will aim at it, and then aims a strike at Yuji's neck to kill him. Yuji seems to take the bait, and Mahito believes that he's won, when suddenly a second impact strikes where Yuji's hit landed. Originally, Divergent Fist came to be from Yuji's bad habits, and as his cursed energy control got better, he lost it. Ever since his fight with Choso where it reappeared though, he'd learned how to control it. Mahito winds up to retaliate as Yuji charges a strike of his own. Todo suddenly speaks up, claiming to Mahito that an arm is merely decoration, and that applause is an acclamation of the soul, slapping his stump against his hand as he does so. Mahito, reacting in anticipation to Yuji switching, turns to swing behind him instead, but Yuji stays right where he is. Todo apologizes as he realizes his curse technique is indeed gone. Yuji strikes Mahito in the side, landing yet another black flash. The attack sends Mahito flying out of the crater, where he manages to regain his footing. Refusing to give up even though his transformation has been deleted, he tries to vomit up transfigured humans, but has none. Yuji gives Mahito one of the coldest speeches in the history of cinema, which I will not replicate here out of respect for its coldness, and we also receive what many consider the best piece of imagery that has come out of this manga. As Mahito runs away, Yuji giving chase, suddenly Gettone appears before him, asks Mahito if he needs help, and the episode ends. With recap out of the way, let's go over the basic points of the plot. 1. The fight between Yuji, Mahito, and Todo spills onto street level, and then over to the ground zero of Sukuna's Shibuya slice-up. 2. Mahito whips out a 0.2 second domain expansion, mimicking Gojo, and manages to hit Todo's hand with idle transfiguration, forcing him to cut it off. 3. After landing another black flash on Todo, Mahito realizes the true shape of his soul, but also takes another black flash from Yuji. 4. Mahito assumes his new form, instant spirit body of distorted killing, and Yuji has no luck trying to damage him at that point. 5. Mahito opens a hole in the ground, moving the battle into a Matrix Revolutions type environment. Both combatants are reaching the ends of their ropes. 6. Yuji needs a black flash to win. The two square up for their final clash. 7. With a little misdirection from Todo, Yuji manages to land a final black flash on Mahito. As Mahito tries to turn tail and run, Getonte shows up, offering to assist him. Now let's get into some analysis. This one will be light again, as it's mostly just more straightforward fighting, but I want to pay some special attention to Mahito's new form. The most interesting aspect of it for me is the resemblance it has to Hanami. That Mahito's true form, as he puts it, would so closely resemble another of the disaster curses raises some intriguing questions for me. It makes me wonder if perhaps the disaster curses would all somehow end up in this type of form if given enough time or growth. Looking at the two who did not have a form like this, Jogo and Dagon, we know that Dagon specifically was still a cursed womb right up until the very end when he was finally born and assumed his first form. Jogo, on the other hand, didn't seem as if he had any need to evolve, given how strong we had seen him to be. Without being challenged, one cannot achieve growth. However, if that challenge is too great or otherwise insurmountable, it can actually stifle growth. Jogo had the unfortunate position of only ever fighting the strongest characters in the series, or straight up decimating characters who were much weaker than him. As he was never in a position to encounter that sweet spot challenge that pushed him to improve without being crushed effortlessly by his opponent, we don't really know whether he could have improved or been pushed to evolve like Mahito. Basically, my point here is that perhaps Dagon and Jogo, had circumstances worked out as such that they had the opportunity, could have evolved in a similar way and ended up looking like Hanami and Mahito, which would draw a clear connection visually between the disaster curses, and would also make thematic sense since all of them stem from similar roots of being born from humanity's collective fear towards specific parts of nature. Alternatively, we could consider that this is instead solely a reflection of Mahito himself. After all, he achieves the transformation by using his technique, which is unique even from the other disaster curses as it has nothing to do with control over a particular element or aspect of nature, but of the much more metaphysical concept of souls. I suppose you could argue that to someone who believes in souls, they would be just as natural a part of the world as plants or water. But either way, his technique is the only one among the disaster curses that relies on manipulating something that already exists, rather than being able to create at will. It could be argued that this form ended up being influenced by Hanami due to Mahito's roots as a curse born from humanity's fear of humans themselves. And humans obviously look at those they are close to and look up to for inspiration and influence. Hanami is the only disaster curse we really saw Mahito having much camaraderie with, seeing as he always argued with and annoyed Jogo, and we never really saw him interact much with Dagon at all. From this perspective, you can see how he might have felt inspired by Hanami and ended up subconsciously making his true form resemble Hanami. Or, if you prefer the idea that this is truly meant to reflect the shape of his soul, that Hanami influenced the shape of his soul just as friends and loved ones can shape our souls. Drop a comment if you have ideas of your own. Lastly, let's go over the bonus pages from these chapters in the manga. After Chapter 129 and Chapter 131, we get the last two parts of Akutami's journey to properly understanding Gojo's technique. There is no bonus after Chapter 130, we just roll right into the next chapter. Also, after Chapter 132, we get a page offering more info on Mahito's new form. Enjoy the quiet reading time. And that's my episode recap and story analysis for the 21st episode of the second season of Jujutsu Kaisen. YouTube has apparently started making the like button light up if the words thumbs up are used in the video, so hit that like button when you see the pretty RGB lights. Make sure to subscribe and turn on bell notifications if you want to be here as soon as possible each week as I put out new videos for each episode as it airs, and feel free to drop a comment with suggestions as to other videos you might like to see, such as character analysis videos or explanations. Thanks for watching.